Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Early access titles, paid betas, and crowdfunded games in general have always come with a giant dose of caveat emptor, or buyer beware. And while the failure rate of crowdfunded titles has slowly fallen in the past 2 years, it is still a very real danger to gamers and developers alike. However, there are now some games that make use of the early access model without actually being an early access game. These typically come in the form of closed alphas or betas, where the benefit of pre-ordering the game grants you access to these games while they are still in development. This is a more dangerous level for gamers, as these companies have you purchasing the game directly from them, as opposed to going through some form of distributorship like Steam or GOG. And in spite of what many people think of entities like Steam, their size and strength can sometimes be a benefit to gamers by affording them an easy way to enforce basic consumer rights, such as refunds. Purchasing directly from the developers, of course, does not remove access to those rights, but it does make it inexorably more difficult for customers to be able to exercise those rights. The game on your screen now is called Escape from Tarkov. It is a first-person shooter with RPG and MMO elements where the player, either alone or cooperatively with friends, is attempting to survive through various AI and human opponents in order to make it through 10 levels. It's an interesting premise with a good amount of possibilities to offer. And at first glance, the developers seem to be on the level, with a publicly stated intent to not make use of microtransactions or any of the other industry chicanery that have become so incredibly popular this year. Battlestate Games seems to be a shoo-in for a massive amount of support from the community, support that they have actually been receiving in droves, but not everything with this game is all peaches and cream, unfortunately. This game has been facing severe issues surrounding its development of late, with an extremely delayed transition from alpha to beta, customer relations issues, server issues, desync problems, lag, and any other number of problems. There is also the fact that the transition from alpha to beta seems to be in name only, as the game is far from feature complete at this point in time. Also, as can be expected with many developers, Battlestate Games' behavior in response to criticism has been less than stellar. A Big Fry TV had his non-disclosure agreement slammed back into place after he spoke critically in one of his videos in regards to issues with the game's servers. This occurred after 10 videos were made by him showcasing the game and even going so far as to purchase additional copies of the game with money out of his own pocket in order to provide to some of his viewers. Regardless of the extremely large amount of support shown to them by Big Fry TV, even one single act of speaking honestly and openly was enough for Battlestate Games to revoke his permissions to even discuss the game, let alone produce videos or stream gameplay. In addition, the developers have responded negatively to their regular customers as well. At the beginning of August, the entire Australian player base found themselves unable to connect to the game's servers. This seemed to be surrounding networking and server issues, as the Australian players, lacking any game servers in their region, were forced to connect overseas. As the problem drug on for an exceptionally long period of time, people began making discoveries of their own, and accusations started coming out due to the general lack of response from the developers. And when the developers did finally respond, they engaged in insulting comments such as "put the tinfoil hat down," and were in general extremely dismissive of their customers' concerns over the whole debacle. Desync issues are also extremely common, with reports flooding in across the globe for weeks and months, with no significant improvement being made in that regard. It would seem, though, that the biggest concern surrounding the game for close to a full year now is surrounding the game's refund policy. Now, refunds with crowdfunded games are most definitely not unheard of. People grow dissatisfied with the game, grow frustrated with the amount of time the game's development is taking, or the game ends up going in a direction that the backer didn't originally sign up for. And this situation seems to be a little different than what we're accustomed to with crowdfunded games or early access on Steam. The way this is being handled by Battlestate Games is that what people are doing is not actually buying into some form of early access or Kickstarter. What they are doing is pre-ordering the game, which grants them access to the alpha and then the beta version of the game for the purposes of bug testing and the like. This pre-order, they are stating, is a non-refundable deposit, not a purchase. In the game's terms of service, they state the following: By pre-ordering the product, you are authorizing Battlestate Games Limited to automatically charge your account immediately upon submitting the pre-order, and you agree that you will be authorized to participate in beta testing of the product and to download the product and use the service when it becomes available. The amount you pay will be held with Battlestate Games Limited as a non-refundable deposit. The NRD amount is clearly shown on the product webpage, and it represents the full purchase price of the product. Any NRD collected is non-transferable. The release date of the product is determined by the Battlestate Games Limited, and it is specified on the product webpage as an estimation of when the product will be available. Availability of the product on or before the release date is not guaranteed. And lastly, you agree to forfeit to Battlestate Games Limited the NRD in any event, except if the product becomes not available if Battlestate Games Limited, at its sole discretion, determines it will never be able to release the product. Delays in release of the product by Battlestate Games Limited or distributors do not result in the product becoming not available. And there is no grace period in terms of these deposits. No 48 hours, no 14 days, no nothing. It seems once they have your money, Battlestate Games makes the assumption that it is theirs now, and anyone who wants a refund be damned. And this stance is actually in direct violation of law in most countries. You see, despite what Battlestate puts into their end-user license agreements or terms of service, if those statements are in direct violation of law, then they're unenforceable. No license agreement can circumvent or nullify your legal rights as a consumer, and as a matter of record, credit card companies, banks, and PayPal all abide by the law and don't give a flying fuck about the game's terms of service. However, it means this game is being purchased directly instead of through a distributorship like Steam or GOG. The only clear way to be able to force the issue is to do a chargeback on your credit card or a reversal through PayPal. Now, it is, as with anything else, not as simple as clicking a button. In order to do a chargeback, either through your credit card company or through PayPal, you have to make a statement in regards to how the product hasn't been delivered as expected or promised. So while it's not entirely simple, it is still very possible. It's also worth noting that, in terms of legality, you are not in actuality seeking a refund. What you're doing is canceling your pre-order of the product. That is a very important distinction that many people seem to overlook, and not making that distinction could possibly make it more difficult for you to be able to get your money back. And I know that Escape from Tarkov has its usual fanatics attached to it just as any other game does, and they are the same wherever they go and tend to make the same excuses, it seems. The first is that they claim that changing the scope is a good thing, thinking that they get more content for the same price. But in actuality, we see far more commonly than not that these developers end up biting off more than they can chew, and the dangers of a game getting buried in scope creep are a very real thing. A perfect example of that would be Star Citizen and Squadron 42, with unprecedented levels of crowdfunding and no end in sight as to an actual release date for either game. Another commonly heard argument is that people are too impatient and that they just need to have faith in the developers. To this, I would say that you owe no allegiance to game developers or game publishers for any reason whatsoever, especially ones that are so dismissive of customers with legitimate issues and grievances. It is because of actions like those I've seen with Battlestate Games and others that my Diamond Dev series exists to begin with. In order to showcase not only a good game that is worthy of your time and money, but of a developer who is receptive to criticism and treats their customers with respect. And given what I've seen so far in regards to their own actions, Battlestate Games will never make it onto that list, which should be quite evident given the series they now find themselves on. And of course, there is also the very common act of fanatics denigrating anyone and everyone who dares have the temerity to question the provider of their favorite new shiny thing. This again speaks back to an unwarranted and completely undeserved loyalty that is very much a one-way street. While these developers are held in unrealistically high esteem by these tribalistic fans of the game, it is self-evident by Battlestate Games' own actions that this loyalty is not reciprocated. Unfortunately, what Battlestate Games is doing here is really nothing new within the games industry. I can understand they're not wanting to provide refunds if that money was being used in the form of an early access or Kickstarter, but the methodology here is that people are pre-ordering the game and in return get access to it before it's finished. And while this sounds a lot like early access, these pre-orders aren't being defined by the developers as being needed in order to fund the game's development, so that excuse really just doesn't fly. Now, I'm not posting this in order to attempt to get people to avoid pre-ordering the game or to urge them to seek refunds. At the end of the day, those decisions and how you spend your money is entirely up to you, and it would be completely irresponsible of me to attempt otherwise. However, Battlestate Games, by virtue of their statements, attempted subversion of the law in direct opposition to basic consumer rights, and actions to attempt to silence fair critique of their game, have most certainly earned their spot on our list of dirty devs. But as always, please do let me know what you think down in the comments below. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.